And, I'm not trying to burden or brag about all the work goes into, even though I just did, but
Mm.
it is a lot of work. Anyway, we've got 40 minutes now. Let's try and get the most out of this one. Of course, if it all goes wrong, we can always start again and do another 40 minutes, trapped in these 40-minute cycles. Anyway, what were we talking about? Zara Sultana, first
Your wife to be.
wife to be, my first wife to be, of the many wives I will have over the course of my life. She uh she would be the first Muslim prime minister of this country. It seems like a long shot. Not necessarily because she's Muslim. I think this is one of the core kind of confusions we have these days. She's the wrong kind of Muslim.
Mm.
So I think, that it's unlikely that you'd have a Jewish prime minister of the UK.
Benjamin Disraeli.
Yeah, I mean it's a numbers game, right? I don't know about in those times what the Friends of Israel. I mean, Israel didn't exist, but it's like what the Zionist lobby thing was, like, what the politics were. But these days, like, you could have a Jewish prime minister, but you couldn't have the wrong kind of Jew as prime minister because it's not really about. And it's at the end of the day, it's about politics. People want to make it about religion and, being Muslim. You could have like, Savage Avid could have been prime minister, presumably at some point. He was quite sort of weak-willed, subservient man-child that you can place into the prime minister thing. I mean, that's what all prime ministers are. He fitted that quite well. But you couldn't have like a pro-Palestinian Muslim woman. I think there's a lot of problems there for Zara Sultana.
I don't know, Daniel. You say that, but I mean, Corbyn came within a few thousand votes of winning in 2017, as you well know. So, I mean, I
Yes,
think
and that
politics is so in
the
flux.
issues that would face Zara Sultana as being a pro-Palestinian Muslim woman, that didn't hinder Corbyn at all, did it? It's not an issue. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's you're up against it for a number of reasons, and all of these kind of little things are just another strike. I would like to say that it's possible, but it does, like, it's not the main issue, but it pertains to the main issue, which would be with a new left-wing party, how does it tackle the idea of mass immigration and sort of
Mm,
identitarian politics on the right?
mm,
Uh, would be one of the big issues. The other one would be, what the fuck is it actually going to do economically? What is the plan that's actually any different to what Rachel Reeves is crying about these days? Because I don't think
mm,
I I don't I think there was an interesting point when Corbyn first came in as leader of the Labour Party, and he got in a few quite, I can't remember, they were now interesting economic advisors
mm,
who were quite mainstream but had been sidelined by the establishment because they didn't fit in
mm,
with the sort of pro-austerity agenda.
mm,
And it'll be interesting to see what with a party with an actual framework, with a voice, because they will have some MPs, and that takes you back to the
mm,
past and action thing. So, 20
mm,
MP odd 20 MPs voted against it. Some of them, maybe all of them, maybe none of them. Well, some of them, maybe one or two of them, certainly will join this new party. And then if there's a momentum, maybe others will as well. So you've got the independents, Corbyn, Zara Sultana, John McDonnell, uh, the Muslim ones who I can't remember the name of because they've got strange
McDonald's not
surnames.
leaving yet, is he? He's
Well,
staying with
they're
Labour. That's what he's been quite clear on that.
technically. I mean, he's lost the whip, so he's technically not a
Mm,
Labour MP, though he's a Labour member, just like Corbyn was.
mm,
Um, Now Labour may take him back in, and that makes it a more difficult decision. But I think at the
mm,
moment he's technically an independent MP. Obviously, if he joined another party, he couldn't be a Labour member anymore.
mm,
But who fucking cares about that? Yeah, I think, there's people like someone that was very vocal in the discussion about Palestine Action was Clive Lewis. Someone
mm,
like that would be that's the sort of,
mm.
I'm not, no, what's the phrase? Not casting shade at Clive Lewis, but he's kind of like a barometer of,
Mm, mm,
what I
mm,
mean? He's not, I'm not saying he doesn't have convictions. I mean, I'm not actually a massive fan of his. I just don't feel like shitting on everybody all the time, Matt. I don't want to do that. But
So,
he,
but
yeah, anyway, if he joined, that would certainly show that because I think he's someone that wouldn't want to throw his career away on something,
mm, mm, mm,
even if he thought it was the right thing. I don't know, maybe he would. I don't know what
mm,
I'm talking
mm,
about. But let's keep it hypothetical. Let's keep it classy and let's keep it hypothetical and abstract. If
mm.
someone like Clive Lewis were to join the party, that would be a sign that there was people within Labour more deeply saw this as a legitimate vehicle,
Mm.
as a party that is likely to last or do well in an election. Does that make sense?
Certainly, if there are 20 odd sympathetic MPs, you would have thought it would just, I don't know when there's even been a precedent for it, but how many MPs would have to leave before the Starmer government would fall, or at
Well, he's
least
got a
start?
huge majority despite not getting many
Yeah, he's got a
votes.
huge majority, but it'd just be unprecedented to
Yeah.
have, a dozen MPs or something like that leave the party. The Conservative opposition would just be all over that, and it would show such division. I just think it would be very difficult politically to and image-wise to get over that. So it might be that even though I do think it's been 5 years too late before for Corbyn to set up a party, 6 years, um, it might actually be quite significant in terms of the fortunes of the mainstream Labour Party. Um, Again, it seems like a very kind of chaotic situation, and I guess there'll be a lot of backroom deals and stuff that will prevent them from doing that. But
Doing well.
even just from leaving to the new
Yeah.
Corbyn party, but even if it was just 5 or 10. Um,
Well,
I don't
it's one
know.
of those things, isn't it, where it's sort of self-fulfilling. Like there is a kind of there's a tipping point, right? Where
Yeah, yeah.
as an MP, your main concern is keeping your seat as an MP,
Mm,
regardless of
mm,
what party it is. And
mm,
if you're in certain parts of the country, certain constituencies that historically always been a particular party, then you as the MP of in that party in a strong Labour seat, like for example, uh, where I am in Walthamstow, right? This is a very, very strong Labour seat. And I'm not saying that what's her face is going to move. She's one of the last people that would ever leave. But just as an example, a strong Labour seat that's been strong for a while, that continues to grow, in fact,
mm,
the majority, then it's like you're not going to win that seat, your seat. You could win a seat, but you're not going to win your seat by changing to any other party.
mm,
But then things are changing really rapidly, and the polls are really crazy at the moment because people are all over the place. So you see someone like Lee Anderson, who was
mm,
voted in as a Labour councillor, then became did he become a Labour MP? I think so. He became a Tory MP, and then he
mm.
became
Reform.
Reform MP.
Mm,
So over the course of one parliamentary term, basically, he went from
mm,
Labour to Reform via the
yeah.
Conservatives, keeping his seat the whole time, and then keeping a seat in elections that were fought.
Mm, mm,
So the seat was changing. The demographics or whatever of the voters were shifting in that area, and so the Reform candidate was going to win. So he
mm,
just became the Reform candidate. I think I
mm,
remember making a joke at the time. It's like instead of having various candidates, why don't we just have the same 600 odd MPs or whatever, and we just vote for what party we want them, what badge we want them to
yeah.
wear, and they
Yeah.
all just shuffle in their seats.
Mm,
Because you could see that a lot. And so if you could see in the polls a new party doing very well in certain constituencies where Labour are struggling, then you might see the MPs who are not particularly enamored with this government or with what the Labour Party's become, actually just joining the party before
mm,
the actual election. So you've
mm,
got various ways to go, but once that starts to happen, then there's more momentum, right? Once you've got a few MPs,
mm,
and it's not just MPs. I didn't mention this last time. A huge number of councillors were either blocked from running or left the Labour Party. I think it's called the Liverpool Independent Councillors, which is like a whole. I think there's a whole council that's been historically Labour that's now entirely independent because they've all
Mm,
left the Labour Party. So there's things like this where, without even having an election, this new party could take a council, could take 10 MPs or more. It could be,
mm,
as big as the Lib Dems without ever having any votes at all, which is interesting.
mm, mm,
I don't know what's going to happen with these, because as I say, there's about 29 of them, I think, are Labour MPs through and through. They haven't lost the whip, or they did lose the whip and now they've got it back. Those kind of people, I think, would be very difficult. Someone like Diane Abbott, despite being treated abominably by the Labour Party at the last election, um, it'd be really, I can't. I thought when Diane Abbott won, I thought she might immediately go independent, but that was probably too
mm,
exciting. I was thinking
mm,
too dramatic. It would have been an interesting thing to have done though, because it was obviously Corbyn had just been chucked out
mm,
just before the election. They'd been not, dangling it in front of him so that he couldn't make a plan before the election. Maybe they'll let him back in, maybe they won't. Then they obviously chucked him out just before, so he had to desperately scramble to form an independent campaign. And at the same time, they tried to push Diane Abbott out. Diane Abbott, there was a big backlash. She stayed. She won, of course,
mm,
as the Labour MP. Now, Diane Abbott, of all the Labour MPs in the country, she's one of, apart from people like Jeremy Corbyn, had a very good chance, has a very good chance of winning as an independent.
mm, mm.
And she could, and I think they're aware that if she hadn't won as an independent, she could have dramatically. I mean, I don't know, split the Labour vote to the point that anyone else could win in Hackney. Seems unlikely. I think they just thought that maybe she could win. And also the
Mm.
backlash was affecting the entire national campaign. But anyway,
So
if
is
she had, sorry, just if she had, after winning for Labour under a Labour ticket, immediately gone to be an independent afterwards,
mm,
that would have
mm,
been really interesting. And it's that kind of momentum that this movement of having a new left party has never really had. Everybody's kind of moved slowly, cautiously.
mm, mm,
And now that Zara Sultana has come out with something
mm,
public, it's
mm,
this could be, this is really the sort of knife edge moment. Are people going to move? Because the other thing that happened, you had the Palestine Action thing, but the other thing that happened this week was the massive rebellion against Labour's PIP
mm.
bullshit that they were doing.
Yeah,
And so,
disability payments. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we could talk about that. That would be something that would be good to talk about anyway, but it would also maybe link into what the hell is the left wing party going to do economically. But sorry,
Mm.
Matt, you were going to say something.
Uh, well, I was just going to say, I was going to ask you why you thought that Diane Abbott hadn't become independent, given that she's so closely aligned to Corbyn and that lot. And is that perhaps because she's been given so much, just a lot of psychological abuse over the years, is she just more comfortable to be in like a central, a mainstream party? And would it be just too horrible for her to have to fight another front? And the
I
other
don't
point
know.
I was going
Yeah,
to make,
just
the
quickly,
other
I
point,
don't know if it is more horrible for someone like Diane Abbott to be in the Labour Party or as
yeah,
an
would it make any
independent.
difference? Yeah, might be nicer. And then the other, so I don't quite know why she hasn't moved. That seems a little bit strange in a way, but maybe it's just,
I feel like there
it's
might be
just
an obvious answer that I don't
inertia.
know.
There might be a bit of inertia there, perhaps. And then the other point I was going to make was just to say that it might well be that a lot of this really does hinge on how Zara Sultana comes across to the British public, to the electorate, because I mean, Corbyn's already a known entity. Like everyone's got their opinion on him, but I don't think the name recognition of Zara is particularly high. I mean, I haven't really followed her career at all. I looked her up the other day because you'd mentioned you'd talked more about her, but I don't know a great deal about her. I wouldn't have thought many people would know. So I think if she can come across really well, that could really be the most fundamental factor
Yeah,
in
I don't
determining
know.
whether
I have
those
no idea. I
things.
mean, she's very good in a lot of ways.
Mm,
As I say, like, if it's going to be a left wing party with Corbyn, it's going to be divisive anyway.
mm,
And because just of who she is and her politics, um, like she's going to get a lot of shit. And how she handles that, I don't know. She's obviously already had quite a time of it internally in the Labour Party, people briefing against her, all sorts of
mm,
nonsense going on. but that's very different to being a national figure.
Mm,
I
mm,
mean, she's one of those people like I don't want to compare her to AOC because I don't like these comparisons, mainly because the Americans are like just shit. Like Bernie Sanders is like nothing compared to Jeremy Corbyn, right? I mean, he's
mm,
an
mm,
interesting figure. Probably
mm,
would have been a better president than Donald Trump, for example.
mm, mm,
But
mm.
Bernie, Jeremy Corbyn is a much I don't know, just searching for like I don't want to say serious. I don't know what the word is, like authentic,
Mm.
something
He's part of
better.
he's a man of the people, is
No,
what
he's
we're
just
saying.
better, just
Just better.
superior in every way.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know exactly how, but he is. But yeah, no, I do think Jeremy Corbyn, like his career and what he's done in politics, when he was at the top or near the top, it is markedly better than Bernie Sanders. And certainly having, in Corbyn's case, lost the leadership and in Bernie Sanders lost the race, what he has continued to do or stood for in the face of a lot of opposition and nastiness, I think is better. Bernie
Oh, of
Sanders, I
course.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
but
mean,
the,
yeah.
but the,
I think we'll. Yeah. I mean, unless you're on the right, I think everyone accepts that
yeah.
Corbyn's a principled and decent person. Um,
No, but I
and
think if you
but I'm
know,
sure
but
Bernie Sanders is as well. But Bernie Sanders is playing the game. He's
yeah,
a senator. He's part of he's part of the system. And also, crucially, I know you wanted to come on to this point about, what kind of economic change can there really be in Britain? And obviously, I do think that's important. But I mean, the real dividing line between Bernie Sanders and Jeremy, and I think probably with Zara on Jeremy's side as well, is over foreign policy. And I've always believed really that if you solve a lot of those foreign policy issues and you don't pump loads of money into that and you're not inflating fear all the time and all those things, then a lot of the domestic issues will be almost naturally resolved. So it could well be that, no, I was going to go too far there and say that Palestine is still the question, as John Pilger put in a couple of major documentaries. That was the title of his films. Palestine is still the question, I think it was. Um, but it could well be that this foreign policy adventurism by Starmer could yet bring him down, because there's such clear dividing lines between him on that and Corbyn. Whereas really what Corbyn was ever saying on economic stuff was, "Oh, we'll chuck another 50 billion into the economy and we'll try and be fair where we can on other stuff." So I mean that's the big dividing line for me. That's partly because I'm interested in international politics, but it's also seems to me that that's where the massive dividing line is between not just with Bernie Sanders, but also with sorry, my thing just went click. But also with the
what
mainstream
about we've only got
Labour
40
Party.
minutes. The Labour Party and the New Party, that would be the dividing line, international blah de blah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, but I don't think well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I was going to say I don't think that is the dividing line with voters or that
With vote, that's the problem, and that's what I'm mapping my own thoughts onto that, which is not so
but
good.
having said that, it weirdly feeds in a kind of culture war way because
Mm,
everything's it's like if you are I don't know if you call it a genocide at all, right?
mm,
And you focus or pay attention to the fact that the Israeli military is shooting people who are coming for food aid.
mm,
And this gets really crazy, right? Something that's happened over the last week that we could discuss is the Tehran Times, the paper of record in Iran, uh, said that they had evidence of a false flag operation being whatever planned in the US by Israel.
right. Okay.
Um, and you know, they're like, well, we have some evidence, and then like everyone else, like, well, we don't believe it or we don't see the evidence. Who knows? But like for many people, that is just preposterous to
Mm,
imagine that Israel, even though
mm,
they do
mm,
accept most people who are engaged with this kind of do accept there's been at least deliberate starvation and certainly
Yeah.
an indifference to the killing of civilians, the mass death of civilians in Gaza, and the pager attacks. But there is a certain level of, yeah, well, they would do that. It's almost like,
They are audacious.
yes,
Let's
they're
put it like
audacious
that.
towards Arabs or something. Like there is, but they wouldn't. It's not racist, but it's like kind of this is some. They would never do that to American people. Like it wouldn't serve them in the long term. So I don't think they give a shit about the long term, right? They're desperate to manipulate things right now so they can maximize. Anyway, this kind of stuff. The other thing, Oxycontin in the food that they're giving Palestinians. Have you heard about that?
No, what was that?
So it's come out, rumors, speculation that they are putting opioids into the food to try and drug the people of Palestine and get them addicted to pacify the
Wow.
population. And there is a history of that as well. Again, is it proven? And it's like, well, partly one, the problem is that no media are allowed in. The Israelis are the one that just, I mean, this is the thing. Like, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But how do you quell a rumor like that? Why do you think rumors like that come about? And how can you set up a situation where they're less likely? One thing is don't allow the country that has been bombing Gaza and killing thousands, whatever you think, whether you believe the Hamas medical numbers, whatever, thousands of people have died, thousands of children been maimed, and that government are the one that have complete control over the food aid that is going into Gaza, and they won't let any international aid organization. Like, if you don't want rumors about how that's being operated, let other people do it. Like, it's just, to accept, well, Israel should do it, and then if you question what Israel's doing, then you're like, why wouldn't you question Israel at this point? I mean, it's crazy. It's just absolutely mental. It's like, would you expect like Russians, like the Russian military, to be going into fucking Kiev and giving out fucking ham sandwiches? It's like, no, that's not. That I would be suspicious of that. Or if you were suspicious of that, I would think it's justified. Why are they doing that? And why won't they let anybody else give the sandwiches out? It's like, for fuck's sake. Anyway, what were you even talking about? Zara
Well,
Sultana. Zara Sultana.
one, one I was going to say that I think although foreign policy is sort of my pet project, it is nevertheless obvious that things are going to continue to get worse in foreign policy. Trump hasn't solved things by bombing Iran. It may have delayed whatever, but. And it's the same with Russia. I mean, everyone knows that defense spending is going to go through the roof in Britain and elsewhere. Everyone's talking about as though there's going to be World War III in either 5 minutes or 5 years. And so those material conditions on the ground, the spending and the chaos, is going to become increasingly an issue. I can't see how that's going to decrease. So the more that Zara and Jeremy are able to use that as a wedge. I don't mean use it because obviously we all believe that it shouldn't be happening anyway, but politically I think that they will find increasing space there. And we could be back into a position where there are, at some point there could be 1 million people back on the streets again, like in 2003, but hopefully this time doing it in a way that is bit more sustained, and perhaps with even greater concern for our own safety.
There has been a sustained march, and it's been in London every week, and the numbers have reached. I'm pretty sure they've got up towards 1 million at one point.
Really?
Not as I'm really bad with numbers.
I'm not sure about that. My friend went the other day.
No, not at the moment, but some towards at certain moments at the beginning, and then there was the one that still quite early on, I suppose, when What's the Chops tried to stop it because it was the day before Memorial Sunday or whatever. That was what's
the
the
Home
name?
Secretary.
Yes, Suella Braverman. Yeah, she tried to stop it, and there was and I think because something devastating had happened that week as well in Gaza, like there was a particular, and then there was one. I think there might be one coming up. That's sometimes they try and rally, they do it. Some people do it every week, but obviously they can't get huge numbers every week. But they have got the numbers have been incredible considering how long this has been going on,
Mm,
and
okay. Yeah.
it hasn't really been covered. And obviously, it could
Mm,
always be bigger. But
mm,
it's so divisive because the narrative has always been with the Conservative government and now obviously with the Labour government that this is terrorism. That this is it's not a protest. It's
mm,
fear mongering among the Jewish
mm,
community in central London and all
mm,
this kind of
mm,
stuff. Why do
mm.
the Jews live in central? Why do they own all the property there? No, I'm joking. It's like but you know what I mean. It's like it's so there is a foreign policy issue, but it's very much taken into this sort of culture war thing. It's like you disagree with the genocide. It's more like if you're concerned about the genocide or you're calling it genocide, it's because you love Muslims and you love immigration
Mm,
and
mm.
you want the white
It
working
completely
class to
feeds
just
into
yeah.
it completely feeds into identity politics, and it completely feeds into domestic policy. Even God knows how long ago, maybe 3 decades ago, the that link between foreign policy and domestic policy was called, I think, intermestic policy
That's quite cool.
by the political scientists, just meaning that these things are so intrinsic. I mean, I have to say that it hasn't seemed that intrinsic to me, even though I've wanted it to be, because I'm like, foreign policy is an absolute nightmare. That should affect what's happening in our country. And oftentimes it hasn't. Of course, Blair even won in 2005 after the whole Iraq thing, or not even after, but after they went in. So it's often seemed that foreign policy isn't that important. But I think there could come a point where that theory of intermestic politics does become
Yeah.
pivotal.
Yeah, it's I mean you're
And
right. I
and
mean
it might need that. It might need the Corbyn party and the and Zara's party to ignite that.
yeah.
And that's why I say I think it's so important how she comes across to the broader public. And of course, the media will no doubt spit on her early grave as quickly as they can. But it
I,
might be that there's an opportunity to cut through there. It's one of the reasons I was so pleased to see that she was going to be joint leader with Corbyn.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, well, obviously my plan before of Corbyn becoming leader, having immediately stepping down was not a good one.
We're not great political movers and shakers, Daniel. Our strategies are
That's
not
why
necessary.
they make the big bucks. But
Yeah.
I mean, joint leadership in that sense, it makes more sense than in the Green Party, for example. Mainly because I don't like the Green Party. That's why it makes more sense. But it does because obviously Jeremy Corbyn is old and doesn't want to be, starting a new party where he will be prime minister, for one term, two terms in an ideal world. Like
Mm.
he wants to be part of a party that is a kind of legacy to the movement that was created when he was leader of the Labour
Absolutely.
Party, and he wants to support that party as best he can. Now, the obvious position is leader, but
Yeah.
that sort of the problem with that is then it becomes another um Corbynism again. And then it's all about Corbyn. And
Mm.
if Corbyn steps down or whatever, then it's over. So I think, yeah, having immediately, instead of having a successor or anything, immediately starting with we've got 10 minutes again, by the way. This
Mm.
is a complete nightmare. I thought it would be quite fun to do the 40-minute thing, but now it's getting on my
I think
nerves.
it's good fun.
All right,
You
you
seem to
put me
be
over.
stressing out.
I've flip-flopped. Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
guess
I thought it 6 years ago when I thought, obviously he can't be really the front and center leader. He needs to be a figurehead. That's what he is. He connects with a large uh, whole swathe of the electorate who believe that he's authentic and a good guy, but he needs someone to be better at the kind of frontline politics stuff. So I think if Zara's good at that, then that could be a really effective combination.
just on your
He's
point of what did you call it? Intermestic?
intermestic. Yeah.
Yeah. Like 2003, it was interesting, right? You had this huge movement um, against the war, and then Labour won again. Now, I mean, one of the problems was, well, what are you going to do? Vote Lib Dem?
Mm,
Come off it, Lib Dem.
mm,
Like there wasn't much in terms of parliamentary politics. There wasn't anywhere to go with it.
mm,
But my point now would be that what really damaged Corbyn when he was leader certainly within the Labour Party membership, was the stuff about anti-Semitism and Palestine and stuff,
Mm,
because there wasn't an appetite for that fight or
mm,
really an understanding of it.
mm,
And now there is what is definitely true is there is a really broad movement across the country of support for Palestine and a real
mm,
interest in it, and people
mm.
really educating themselves about the issue. Now,
Yeah.
how big that is in terms of like if you have a national election, what that's I don't know.
Mm,
Because it's very hard. I don't know what do they do like fucking polls on this. It's very hard to gauge. Obviously, they're very vocal, the people who are involved. So you go
mm,
on TikTok or so any sort of social media, and it's just full of people who are sort of
mm.
pro it. There are also lots of people who are again, who are very pro-Israel
Yeah,
and stuff.
so for instance, when it is difficult to know, but when I stood for Parliament last year, I mean, I hardly got any votes, but there was, generally speaking, people were very happy to because I was doing it purely on foreign policy. That was my sort of idea.
In
To
Bath,
pure, yeah, yeah.
what people were listening to you
And
about Palestine.
people responded to that. People, everyone's interested in that. Everyone thinks, oh, that's a really legitimate point, but they didn't really vote for me. So they, and I know that's kind of obvious, but at the same time,
Yeah,
it's
well,
going to be a real test, isn't it? When is it going to become the absolute key issue?
it's a different.
And I don't know when.
They're two separate things because I think
Mm,
if you have a new party and it's gained MPs, it's making waves. It can't be
yeah,
ignored because if it
exactly.
can be ignored, it will be much like
Mm,
George Galloway is, right? But if it can't be
mm,
ignored
mm,
because you're having these, you imagine the kind of crazy summer of Corbyn turns up at Newcastle and everybody, it's thousands of people on the river like before, it's these huge events and stuff and
mm,
and and,
mm,
and Labour MPs are crossing the floor, all this kind of stuff, right?
mm,
Then the issue becomes relevant because it'll be used as an attack against Corbyn in a way that it was before. The way that it
mm,
was before, what was so damaging was that not only did it seem credible to a lot of people, but what was credible, and again, it's kind of self-fulfilling, is that it was unpopular. He needed to become prime minister because of all the great things he was going to do domestically. And he was being damaged because people in the country, generally did not have an appetite for this like bizarre position and interest in Palestine. Now,
mm.
that might have changed.
Very different. Mm,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or
Yeah,
at
he was ahead of
least,
his time.
yeah.
Ahead
Well,
of
or
his
at
time,
the
really.
very least, you can't just clearly say that in the way that you could before. There will
Mm,
be a lot of people,
absolutely.
huge support either side. And, in an ideal world, what will happen is that much like with Donald Trump, it will be the mainstream media that will start to alienate themselves by attack
Mm,
rather than Corbyn being
mm,
alienated. And you saw that with Trump,
mm,
right? Trump was talking about the mainstream media in the US that had no interest in, and they wanted for people to believe that, to reflect that. But what happened was that people were interested and they started to get pissed off at the media. And that's what you would hope would happen.
And I'll make another point as well. You said, "Oh, no one can go to the Lib Dems in 2005, despite they were on the right side with Iraq and all that." But
No,
actually,
they did go.
what
That
happened
was the,
5 years
that was the
later?
saddest thing. They did go. They did go to 2010.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They went to the Lib Dems. And I know that was mainly about tuition fees, but it was also the legacy of them being right on these other issues, like
Talking about
the foreign
shitty
policy issues. And
Starmer
so it
one.
does happen, but it just takes time and
Yeah, well, that was that. I mean, that video with Nick Clegg with the paper, all the promises falling down. Do you not remember that?
oh yeah, yeah.
That was good. That was the only good. I mean, it probably looks cheesy now, but I think at the time it was like one of the few. Actually, some of Blair's in '97 were pretty good. They were a lot more creative, a lot more
Mm.
interesting than Starmer slowly walking out of a
Well,
military
everyone's
plane.
more interesting than Keir Starmer. But it was only a couple of years ago that 4 years ago that Boris Johnson smashed a bulldozer through some wall named Brexit or something, didn't he? So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
these stunts do sometimes
that
happen.
was
So.
very Lib Dem energy. I think what's his face, Ed Davies had like a tiny hammer and he like hammered down a wall at the last election. They always get stuff. It's very what's Spinal Tap. When they
Mm,
ask they order in the what is it they're ordering for their big concert?
A big Stonehenge, or was it?
Yeah, and it's like
a giant Stonehenge.
giant
And it's
Stonehenge, and it's
tiny.
tiny. Yeah, that's basically what happens. That's it. We've got what 3 minutes left. We should probably finish it off because we didn't in the first bit.
Go on. What was the bit that we missed?
No, I'm just saying that we only did about 20 minutes of the first 40 minutes that we had. We should probably do some comments